All right, welcome everyone. As I just mentioned, my name is Kathleen Lane. I am the Program Director for Well at Work, and today is one of our Stories of Success webinar series. I'd like to begin by recognizing that we live and work on the traditional territories of the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. I am personally joining from the unceded and traditional territory of the Squamish people in Squamish, British Columbia. Please feel free to share your own land acknowledgement in the chat. Our Stories of Success webinar series highlights how schools and school districts across Canada are supporting workplace well-being. It's just one of the many ways that EdCan is working towards our goal of embedding well-being into all aspects of Canadian K-12 education systems so that we can support workplace well-being in a durable and sustainable way. In addition to the Stories of Success webinars, we offer Well at Work advisor services, professional learning opportunities, a pan-Canadian community of practice, and an awareness-building platform that includes a variety of free resources available through our website. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest today. Lacy Farrell is the principal of Nbisiing Secondary School. Nbisiing is run by the Nbisiing First Nation located on the shores of Lake Nipissing, which is located in Ontario. I was introduced to Lacy Farrell by Nbisiing First Nations Director of Education, Dan Stevens, and I worked with the two of them to develop and facilitate a workshop for the staff at Nbisiing Secondary School. The workshop was just one of the many strategies they are using to foster well-being, and I'm excited to have Lacy join us today to share more about their approach and the benefits that they are seeing. So Lacy, welcome. Before we get into the work you're doing around well-being, can you share maybe a little bit of context around Nbisiing Secondary School?
Sure. So we've been, they built a school in 2000, in 2000. So we've been open for about, well, they opened the school, but prior to that, we were in a smaller building off-site. And basically it's a First Nation high school from 9 to 12. We have about 100 students. When I first started, there's about 40. We are federally funded. So we fall outside of the provincial school board system. However, we're still mandated by the Ministry of Education. So we're inspected every 2 years. So we give out an OSSD, which is the Ontario diploma. Basically, it's a beautiful, beautiful school on the shores of Lake Nipissing. Most of our students are First Nations. I'd say 98% of our students are First Nation. I'm a community member myself. We have about 20 staff, 10 teachers. We have a lot of middle support. We have a spec ed teacher, a wellness lead, grad coach, student success. We have like a very casual learning environment. The students call all the teachers and staff by their first name. So it's a very welcoming, very, I don't want to say it's a learning environment, and it's almost like a home away from home for the kids. Like we have people think our school's very casual and informal, but it's kind of that's why the students love coming here. It's just a very welcoming environment.
Yeah. And when I was there, it really struck me how supportive it seemed of the students and met them where they were at and where their needs are at the day so that they could learn well.
Yeah, and generally the students that come to our school have a lot of social needs. There's a lot of poverty, addictions, pregnancy, homelessness. This just comes with, intergenerational trauma, all the side effects of residential schools, right? And we also have university and a college. So a lot of the outlying communities, their parents will come to school from the different reserves and they'll come here. So then they'll bring their students to our school.
Amazing. So I understand you've been principal at Nbisiing Secondary School for about 3 years. And in terms of the way you talk about the students and supporting them, it's clear that well-being is a priority. But what inspired you to make that a priority?
I think that what we realize is that the students, their wellness is if their wellness is not well, or if they're not well, they cannot learn. So we
Mm.
have to address that first and building the relationships and figuring out what they need, where their supports are. And we're able to provide the services that they need, right? So we feed them breakfast, we feed them lunch, we provide transportation, we make doctor's appointments. Like our resources are very large, but it's a
Mhm.
requirement for our students to have access to that in order to be able to learn. So we
Absolutely.
really do support them as a person first to be able to do the learning. So
Yeah.
wellness, without the wellness, the learning doesn't happen. So we very quickly realized that we need to provide those services. And so we do have a wellness lead, and
Mhm.
she's the one that basically facilitates all of the outside resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're talking about student well-being just now. What about the well-being of the staff within your
Well,
school?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So for the longest time, we were so focused on our students and their wellness and always just putting them first and really focusing on them, talking about student wellness and what are we going to do? And we have all these support services, but what I realized is we have staff that have needs and we weren't addressing those needs. And when I moved into the principal role, I realized that they can't service the students to the full capacity if we're not providing them with support. So it
Mhm.
really comes from a trauma informed lens. And it came from this place where I felt overwhelmed because this is not my wheelhouse. Like wellness is not, I'm a principal, I do school, I do academics, I'm all about, getting them to the end of
Mhm.
school and on to the next step. So it was this place of I felt like I needed to do something, but I didn't know what I needed to do. And the organization we work for, it's a broader organization. So basically the band office is our boss.
Mhm.
And they talked about doing some wellness. So I'm like, okay, this is great. Like they're gonna initiate some wellness. We're gonna do this. And I'm waiting and waiting. And I'm like, okay, we got what are we doing for the staff? Like how's this? And then one day I was just like, they're not, there's nothing. Like I need to do something and I need to
Mhm.
learn about it. And so it came from, I mean, that's we're academics, we work in schools. When we don't know something, we realize that we got to learn it. And I got to get in there and I got to figure it out because I kept thinking I was doing something wrong. Like it was like
Mhm.
you should, if somebody has trauma and you don't know how to deal with trauma and they're your employee, it's is what do you do? Because you're their boss, they have trauma. How do you I don't know what the right thing to do is, right? So you don't want to make it worse, but you want to provide an environment where they feel safe. So
Mhm.
it really was a combination of a bunch of things happening that I just was overwhelmed and needed to do something.
So I know you've tried and you've done a number of different things.
Mhm,
What
mhm.
are some of those things, and what sorts of impacts are you seeing from the different approaches you've taken?
Well, obviously in this whole, I need wellness. We need to reach out. We got to find like, where is there
Mhm.
training? Like, who can we reach out to? And that's where Dan came and he talked about well at work.
Yeah.
And, and so we started connecting and it was like, okay, we need somebody to come in. Like, what do we need? Like as a school, where I need somebody to come in and help us figure out a school plan and direction for what we can do for wellness. So we basically, we reached out to you. In the meantime, I was like, okay, that's September. Like we had planned this for September, and this was, I want to say late, like it was in maybe January or even the December before. And I was like, I need something now.
Mhm.
So I started doing a little bit of work with trauma, and there was a course. It's called the Little Book of Trauma. And basically they have little lesson plans. And of course, I'm a teacher. So I was like, hey, we can do this. So then we created a wellness classroom. And we also dedicate every Wednesday to Wellness Wednesdays. And every Wednesday as a staff, we get together and it was Wellness Wednesdays and our focus was his book. And every week we did a chapter in the book and started working through the basics. And the reality is I'm not the expert. And how I positioned myself in it was, I don't know what to do. Like, I need your help, and I can't be the facilitator of this. I'm not the expert in this. So we as educators are going to work together, and we're going to work through this together. And of course, being teachers, they're like, hey, I'll do week 1, I'll do week 2, and I'll do this topic. And then people started bringing in their own resources, and together we learned about trauma and the nuances of trauma and what we are able to do, and what is my responsibility, and what is the person who's experiencing the trauma, what is their responsibility? Because I felt like I was the one that had to manage it all. It was, and everybody has trauma. Like whether it's, extreme or minor, everybody has trauma, and we just don't see it. It manifests in different ways, right? So as we work through it together as a staff, we were just learning together. It was awesome.
Yeah, I love that collaborative approach to learning.
Mhm. And
Oh, go ahead.
well, and when you came,
Yeah.
right? So we were kind of like doing that, and then you came and kind of got everybody kind of did a like, okay, let's get everyone on, like, what do we need? What do we want to see? But I needed a person, because it can't be me. Like, again, I know this, just wellness is not my expertise. I needed someone else to put us on a path that made sense, that we were able to attain, that acted as the person, like you had no relationship with anybody, so you were very objective, right? And you were just able to, you had no prior knowledge to, treat anybody differently, or to, you know what I mean? So people felt safe, right? They would give you information, and they wouldn't take what you were saying thinking, oh, she's saying that because of me. Like, I needed that outside person to come in and help me, or with help us. And when I say, like, I have an amazing staff, and I have amazing support staff. My VP works very closely with me, and we work through this together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the workshop that you're talking about, we looked at, individual, collaborative, and systemic actions that can support well-being. How do we shift our mindsets and all get on the same page around using language the same way? And how do we create that ripple of well-being? So when we're well, it creates that ripple around us. But largely, we looked at what does workplace mental health and well-being look like at Nbisiing Secondary School? What kind of culture do we want to experience? And what are we already doing to support that culture? What can we put more energy into? And is there anything we need to let go of? So since the workshop, I know you've had, when we spoke earlier this year, you mentioned there's been some shifts in how your school is approaching well-being and staff well-being in particular. So what have you noticed?
What I've noticed is that, because we've been so open and transparent about certain things, and I've I consistently communicate the idea of, I need my staff to recognize when they're not doing well, and I can support that. What I can't do is recognize it, tell them what they need to do, provide options for them, right? Like, so it's sort of taking ownership of their own, and I tell the staff this all the time. I was like, if everybody can't come to work one day, that's okay. I'll figure it out. But if you just let me know. Like, there's no judgment, and that's what sick days are for. Like, I will never question. If you need a day off, just say, I need a day off. I will never judge you. I will never. And I think that comes, I have a lot of autonomy. I have a very supportive director who support, like, he's amazing, right? And he's just like, you got to do what you need to do, and he gives me the room to do it. And but it's taken a long time for people, because teachers tend to feel guilty of, like, I'm like, okay, if you're feeling guilt, that's not me. I've done nothing to make you feel guilty because you took a sick day. Like, I want you to take the sick day. Like, I encourage you to take the sick day. So it's really a shift in this, the responsibility, right? And where before I felt like that was my responsibility, and I owned all that, and I was trying to manage all that, and I had no idea what I was doing, right? And I think sometimes I because I didn't know what I was doing, I would just believe anything anybody told me that I should be doing. So then I
Yeah.
tried doing that, right? I'm like all over the place. And it was like what it did, it gave me the knowledge to understand that I need to give them room for them to work through their trauma,
Hmm.
work through whatever they need to. I don't have to be a participant in that with them, right? And provide space and opportunity and support. And I'm a space person, so I really do like different spaces in the school. And we have an elders lounge, and an elder comes in, and that's open to the students. It's open to like that elder. We have an elder that comes in all the time, and I go see him, and I just go talk to him, and and he's like he supports. He's been with us through all of our wellness. Like we even had him when you were here.
Hmm.
Um, he knows our staff feel comfortable with him, and they'll go sit with him. We have fires outside, and everything we do, we also provide for the students. And we've always did a really good job of supporting the students. I think we didn't do a good job of ourselves. And when you talk about that ripple effect, that's where if the teacher's doing well, they do better at supporting the students with the trauma too, right? Like it really is the
Yeah,
ripple effect.
absolutely. A couple things that kind of struck me as we were preparing for this. One is you mentioned that, this approach and this being liberal and supportive of people taking sick days has actually led to less absenteeism and more predictable days off, making it easier for
Mhm.
you to plan. And then the other piece that kind of comes up along with this is you mentioned that there was a challenging time for your community back in the fall, and that you really prioritize supports for your staff so that they
Mhm.
could better support the students. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about that example?
Sure. I think it was the third week. We had just gotten back to school. Things were going really well. And one of our past graduates from June, just a few months prior, he was at the college, and he committed suicide. And we found out then like around 8 p.m. On a Tuesday night. And in that moment, I'm like, oh my, like, what am I going to do? Like, he was close to the teachers, he's close to the students, he had family members here. It was
Mhm.
like, what are we going to do? So, my VP and I and the student success, like the entire team, we, through multiple phone calls, I'm like, hey, what are we going to do? Okay, we need to tell the staff, we need to call, we called in supports, we called in an elder, we had a fire, we have Right Path, which is the counseling that's attached to our community. We had 4 counselors come in the next day, and I told all the staff, like we made phone calls to, we divided and conquered, and I said, if anybody can't come in, that's not a problem. I've got backup, I've got supply. Will you need, like we had a lot of conversations to figure out who, they're like, Lacy, I can't do it. I can't come to work. Like this is, they were, and I'm like, no problem. Like that, I need you to stay home. That's helpful for me. If we have to put all the, bring all the kids in the gym, because closing is also not an option because we need to be here for the students, right?
Mhm.
So if you have and because we have a small staff, the possibility could be that we're going to put all the kids in the gym. Like it is one of those the way our staff worked this year, there was some staff that didn't know them. So we had some new staff
Mm.
who were less impacted, right? They're like, Lacy, no problem. I can double up classes. We can, and we all work together. And it, and we debrief like that day, the counselors came in, they were seeing kids, and we had a sacred fire, we had an elder. And then at the end of the day, um, we had a debriefing with the counselors, and I told staff, like, you do not have to stay. If you want to stay, that's fine. If you need to go home, you're exhausted, go home. Because it was a rough day, but we still had business as usual. Like we had classes going on because there were some kids that didn't know them. But in that debrief session, it was an opportunity for people to just kind of talk about what they were feeling and kind of, just breathe, right? And of course, being teachers, we were like, okay, we could have done this better. We could have done that. We should have called here. We forgot to do this. And all we did was beat ourselves up for all the things we could. And the counselors were like, okay, everyone you need to stop. You guys did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Like this was so much. How are you feeling, right? Like, how are you doing? And it was so amazing. Like we just shared like in a circle about how we were feeling, and you know, we all have different roles to play. And for Jen and I, sort of the upper admin, it was just go. Like we didn't think, we just were
Mhm.
in go mode, but it was, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Like I'm, kind of got emotional, and it was an opportunity to kind of just, it was just interesting, right? For us all to just talk about what we went through that day. And it was, and it really did bring us a lot closer.
Mhm. The
Yeah.
sense of community you managed to create, it was palpable when I was there at the beginning of the school year, and from the sounds of it, it's just gotten more
Mhm.
intense, more strong. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and we know that community is one of the drivers of well-being, and having strong connections and the support of your colleagues supports our
Mhm.
well-being at work. So it's
Mhm.
clear that the things you're doing are having a positive impact within
Mhm.
your school. Um, I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that your leadership style is a key ingredient of the success. But what would you attribute the success to?
Hmm. That's interesting. Um, I think I think it's being vulnerable. We as a staff, and I think in since I've become the principal, and I hate the word principal, I don't like that. I'm just the person that, you know, I don't know. I'm just kind of the person who pays the bills. It's the people in the school that are the school, right? They are the people who embody this. And I am I just how I come at things is I don't know what I'm doing, and I need you. If without you guys, I'm nothing. So
Mhm,
my staff know that I give them all the credit. They are, and I'm when I don't understand something, I'm like, hey, I don't get this. Like, can you guys help me? Like, and they it's just I just put it all. I don't pretend like I have no desire to be anything other than exactly who I am, and I show all my vulnerabilities. I let them know, right? So
mhm.
in that, they support me, right? And we do everything together, and it really it's an amazing dynamic that we've worked hard. um
Mhm,
and again, I think part of that also is having, I have Dan is my director, and we were very similar, like our leadership style. So he supports me. He doesn't question me.
mhm,
And really having relationships with the staff. I think it boils down to that, and knowing, um, and they know they can tell me anything. And I'm like, hey, we'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Like, it's not a big deal. And they're just like, what? Really? I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, we're not here to judge. Like mistakes are expected. So we'll work through it. So it's really we just all work together.
mhm. Amazing. And such phenomenal work creating that. Just as we come to an end, do you have any next steps or things that you're working on to ensure that, this positive trajectory you're on continues?
I think, yeah, we've talked about this because and I actually, it's funny because I had this conversation with Dan the other day. It's as we're moving along in our wellness, um, it, we're moving into a different phase where it's not reactive. Everything's not reactive. We can be a little more proactive in
Hmm.
things. And as we become stronger and healthier and more aware and in tune with our wellness, we can shift that now to our students. And I think we there's this line, right, where our students become so dependent on us. I think sometimes that we need to do a better job of the transition, because that one student who left, um, like that really impacted us. And it was like, did he have the supports he needed in college? Like, what could we have done to help him? Because he was
Hmm.
at the college, he started, like, he was in counseling, we was doing all these things here, and we were supporting him. Like, we were very supportive. Did we do a good enough job in that transition to
Hmm.
post-secondary and set him up for his wellness at that next level? So that's kind of where we're going with that is instead of shifting this, because we kind of like our little family, right? Like they're like our
Yeah.
kids and they become very dependent on us. And I think that might be to a fault at
Mm,
certain times, right? So it's really helping students with that transition to find wellness once they leave here.
yeah, amazing. I love that proactive approach.